Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that can change your whole life. Your mind is the most powerful gift God ever gave you. The way you think shapes the way you live. If you want to change your life, if you want to level up, if you want to attract better things, you've got to start by changing what's happening inside your head. See, your brain is like a factory. Whatever orders you send to it, that's exactly what it produces. If you wake up every morning saying, "I'm tired, I'm broke, nothing ever works for me," your brain goes, "All right, that's the order," and it begins to create a life that matches those words. But the moment, and I mean the very moment, you start feeding your mind something positive, something hopeful, something powerful, your brain starts rewiring itself. You begin building new pathways that lead to courage, confidence, and success. Positive thinking isn't magic. It doesn't remove problems, but it changes YOU, and when YOU change, your life has no choice but to follow. Be grateful on purpose. Speak life into your day. Talk to yourself like you're somebody worth believing in, because you are. When you think better, you live better. When you expect more, you become more. And when you fill your mind with positivity, you unlock the version of yourself that God always intended you to be. So today, make a decision, change your thoughts, and watch how your life rises to meet them. Ladies and gentlemen, let me share something with you that has the power to flip your whole life around. Your mind, that God-given gift sitting right between your ears, is the most powerful tool you've got. And if you don't learn how to control it, life will push you around like a leaf in the wind. But if you learn how to guide it, feed it, and shape it, you can create a life you never imagined you could have. Everything starts with your thoughts. Everything starts with how you talk to yourself when nobody else is listening. Your brain is like a big manufacturing plant. It's waiting on instructions from you. Whatever you tell it, whatever you believe, whatever you repeat every single day, your brain gets busy making that your reality. If you get up in the morning and say, "Man, this is going to be a bad day," guess what? Your brain starts pulling files, sending signals, and shaping your mood so that you find every reason for it to be a bad day. If you tell yourself, "I'm not smart enough, I'm unlucky, nothing works out for me," your brain says, "Okay, that's the assignment," and it builds a life that fits those words. But here's the good news. You can flip that script, you can send new orders, you can rewire that whole factory. The moment you start feeding your mind something positive, even if it's small, even if it's just one sentence, your brain begins building new pathways that say, "Maybe I can do this. Maybe things will get better. Maybe I'm stronger than I think." Positive thinking isn't pretending everything is perfect. It isn't ignoring problems. It's choosing to give your mind a direction that lifts you instead of sinking you. Every time you choose a positive thought over a negative one, you're doing construction in your brain. You're laying down a stronger road, a clearer route toward confidence, courage, and peace. You're teaching your mind to look for solutions instead of problems. You're giving yourself permission to dream bigger, try harder, and believe deeper. One of the easiest ways to start changing your brain is with gratitude. I'm talking about being grateful on purpose. Before you get the thing you want, before the situation changes, before everything makes sense. When you stop for a moment and say, "Thank you for what you already have," your brain shifts. It starts paying attention to blessings instead of burdens. It stops searching for what's wrong and begins noticing what's right. Gratitude is like fertilizer for positive thinking. It makes everything grow faster. And let's talk about how you speak to yourself, because that's a big one. You would be shocked at how many people talk to themselves worse than they'd ever let someone else talk to them. You've got to speak life into your own soul. Say things like, "I'm capable, I'm improving, I'm worthy, I'm built for this." It doesn't matter if you don't fully believe it yet. Faith usually starts as a whisper. Keep saying it until your mind believes you and your life starts matching your words. When you change your thinking, you change your energy. When you change your energy, you change your actions. And when you change your actions, your whole life starts shifting. It all begins inside your mind with the thoughts you allow, the beliefs you repeat, and the story you tell yourself. When people hear the phrase, "Positive thinking builds new mental pathways," they think it's just some cute little slogan somebody printed on a coffee mug. But let me tell you, this is real. This is science. This is spiritual truth. And this is life experience all rolled into one. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on the thoughts you choose to feed it. Every single day, you're either strengthening the pathways that lift you up or reinforcing the ones that drag you down. And most people don't even realize they're building highways in their mind that lead straight to stress, doubt, fear, and frustration. Think about it like this: your thoughts travel along roads in your brain. The more you think a certain way, the bigger and more automatic that road becomes. If you spend years thinking, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, people like me don't get ahead, those negative pathways become wide, smooth, well-paved highways. Your brain gets so used to going down that road that it doesn't even ask for permission anymore. It just travels there by default. It becomes a habit, a reflex. But here's the part that should give you hope. You can build a brand new road anytime you choose. You can start paving a pathway toward confidence, success, peace, and purpose. All it takes is repeating a new thought until your brain says, okay, this is the direction we're going now. At first, it feels uncomfortable, almost unnatural, because that new road is just a dirt trail. You have to walk it often, every day, sometimes every hour, before it starts becoming solid. Your brain is always learning. It is always adapting. It is always shaping itself based on your thinking. So when you choose a positive thought, even if your life is chaotic, even if you're scared, even if everything in front of you looks wrong, you're teaching your brain to recognize possibility. You're training it just like you train a muscle. You're saying, we're not going down that old road of fear today. We're taking this new path of hope instead. When you start thinking, I can improve, I can get through this, I have what it takes, something good is coming, your brain begins forming connections that support those beliefs. You start to see opportunities you couldn't see before. You start noticing solutions you overlooked. You start feeling energy and motivation you didn't have. Not because life magically changed, but because your brain became better at guiding you toward what's good instead of what's wrong. Let me give you an example. A person who constantly thinks, I always mess things up, will automatically notice every mistake and ignore every success. Their brain will highlight the negative and hide the positive, because that's the pathway they've built. But if that same person starts telling themselves, I'm learning, I'm improving, I get better every day, their brain begins to highlight growth instead of failure. The mistakes don't disappear, but their meaning changes. Instead of being proof that you're flawed, they become proof that you're trying. And that shift, that tiny mental adjustment, changes everything. It gives you courage to take risks. It gives you strength to keep going. It gives you a sense of control over your own mind. You stop being a prisoner of your old thoughts and start becoming the architect of new ones. You begin designing a mindset that supports you instead of sabotaging you. That's the power of positive thinking. It builds new pathways, roadways in your mind that lead to clarity, confidence, and forward motion. With every positive thought you choose, you're literally rebuilding your brain from the inside out. Gratitude is one of the most powerful forces you can put into your life, but most people treat it like background noise. They say thank you out of habit, not understanding what happens inside them when they do. Gratitude is not just a polite gesture. It is a mental reset button. It is a way to shift your brain from survival mode into possibility mode. When you practice gratitude consistently and intentionally, you start rewiring your mind in ways that change how you think, how you react, and how you move through the world. Your brain is always scanning for what's wrong because that's what it was built to do. It's wired for danger, wired to protect you, wired to look for threats. And in this modern world, those threats often show up as stress, fear, comparison, frustration, or doubt. That's why so many people wake up already feeling overwhelmed. Their brain is tuned to the wrong frequency, but gratitude changes the station. Gratitude tells your brain, we're safe, we're blessed, we have enough, we can handle this. And when you do that, your brain begins searching for what's right instead of what's wrong. The moment you stop and acknowledge something good, no matter how small, you activate the parts of your brain responsible for joy, clarity, and creativity. That's why grateful people handle stress better. That's why they bounce back faster. That's why they're more open to opportunities. Their brain is literally being trained to look for possibility. Most people think they need something big to be grateful for. They're waiting for a miracle, a blessing, a breakthrough. But gratitude doesn't start with big things. It starts with breath. It starts with the ability to stand up in the morning. It starts with the roof over your head, the people who care about you, the lessons you learned from yesterday. If you can't appreciate small things, you won't suddenly appreciate big things. Gratitude is a habit, not a reaction. You don't wait for a blessing to be grateful. You become grateful and blessings start finding you. When you take time each day to say, thank you, your brain begins to associate the present moment with safety and abundance. It shifts your thinking from, I don't have enough, to, I have more than I realized. And when your mind feels abundant, you stop moving through life with fear. You stop chasing things with desperation. You stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Gratitude gives you confidence because it reminds you of what's already working in your life. This doesn't mean you ignore your struggles. You can be grateful and still be honest about what needs to change. But gratitude gives you the strength to deal with problems instead of letting them overwhelm you. It puts you in a position of power because your brain becomes trained to see solutions instead of just obstacles. That shift alone can change the entire direction of your life. Gratitude also rewires how you interpret mistakes. Instead of beating yourself up, you start seeing every setback as a lesson. You start appreciating the growth that comes from challenges. You begin saying, I didn't want this, but I can learn from this. I can rise from this. And when you think like that, life stops feeling like something that's happening to you and starts feeling like something that's happening for you. The more you practice gratitude, the easier it becomes. At first, you have to look for things to appreciate. After a while, your brain begins noticing them automatically. That's when everything changes. That's when gratitude stops being something you practice and becomes part of who you are. And when gratitude becomes part of you, your whole world gets brighter, stronger, and more meaningful. One of the most important things you will ever learn in your life is that the way you talk to yourself shapes the way you see yourself. Most people don't even realize they have a whole conversation going on in their head all day long, and that conversation is either building them up or tearing them down. The voice inside your mind is powerful. It's the voice you hear the most, the voice you trust the most, and the voice that influences your confidence, your decisions, and your belief in what's possible for you. So if that voice is negative, critical, or doubtful, it can sabotage you before you even take your first step. People talk to themselves in ways they would never talk to someone they love. They say things like, I'm not smart enough, I can't do this, I always mess things up, I'm not attractive, I'm too old, I'm too late. When you speak like that, your brain listens. Your brain believes you, and your brain starts acting on those words as if they were instructions. You start playing small, you start hesitating, you start settling, not because you aren't capable, but because you've convinced yourself you aren't. Your self-talk creates the blueprint for your actions. Every sentence you repeat becomes a brick in the foundation of your mindset. If you constantly feed yourself, I'm not enough, you build a foundation of insecurity. But if you start speaking life into yourself, you begin building a foundation of strength. You don't have to feel confident to speak confidently. You don't have to feel strong to say, I can handle this. The words you choose are seeds, and your brain is the soil. Whatever you plant grows. Positive self-talk is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to speak in a way that empowers you instead of weakening you. It's about telling yourself the truth about your potential instead of repeating lies you picked up over the years. When you say, I'm capable, your brain wakes up parts of you that want to rise. When you say, I deserve good things, your brain becomes more open to opportunities. When you say, I'm improving every day, your brain starts looking for proof that you're getting better. You don't have to start with big declarations. Sometimes all you need is a simple sentence that shifts your energy. Something like, I'm learning, or I'm getting stronger, or I've made it through tough things before. Those words remind your brain of your resilience. They remind you that you have survived every challenge you've ever faced. You're still here. You're still fighting. You're still trying. That alone means you're stronger than you think. The more you speak positively to yourself, the more your brain begins building new pathways that support that positivity. It becomes easier to trust yourself, easier to take risks, easier to stay calm under pressure. Your internal voice becomes a coach instead of a critic. You stop tearing yourself down and start cheering yourself on. And when you do that, you start noticing changes in your behavior. You stand a little taller. You push yourself a little more. You show up differently. Negative self-talk doesn't disappear overnight. You've spent years practicing it. But the moment you decide to interrupt those thoughts, you break the cycle. When your mind says, you can't, you respond with, watch me. When your mind says, you always fail, I'm learning. When your mind says, This is too hard. You tell it, hard things are where I grow. You replace the lies with truth. You replace the fear with faith. Your voice is power. Use it to build yourself, not break yourself. Speak to yourself like you would speak to someone you love. Speak strength into your spirit. Speak hope into your future. And speak belief into the person you are becoming. Everything in your life begins with a thought. Before you take an action, before you make a decision, before you start a new path, it begins in your mind. That's why changing your thinking is the first step to changing your life. Most people try to fix their circumstances without fixing the mindset that created those circumstances. They want a new life, but they're still carrying old thoughts. They want better results, but they're still repeating limiting beliefs. Your life can't go higher if your mind is staying low. Your thinking is like the steering wheel of your life. Wherever your thoughts turn, that's where your life follows. If you constantly think about fear, you steer yourself toward hesitation. If you constantly think about failure, you steer yourself toward giving up. If you constantly think about what you don't have, you steer yourself toward lack. But when you start thinking differently, when you start focusing on possibility, growth, strength, hope, and faith, you start steering yourself in a whole new direction. And that direction leads you to opportunities you couldn't see before. Changing your thinking doesn't mean everything instantly gets easier. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels like you're fighting your own mind. And in a way, you are. You're breaking old habits. You're replacing thoughts you've carried for years. You're challenging beliefs that were handed to you by family, environment, or past experiences. But every time you choose a better thought, even if it's small, you are strengthening a new part of yourself. When you start thinking better, your energy shifts. You're not dragging yourself through the day anymore. You're moving with purpose. People notice it. You start attracting different conversations, different opportunities, different relationships, because the vibration you put out into the world comes from the thoughts you hold inside. A person who thinks they're defeated attracts more defeat. A person who thinks they're capable attracts more chances to use that capability. Your thinking is like a magnet. It pulls life towards you. When you expect more for yourself, you begin trying harder. You show up differently. You stop settling for things that don't match your worth. You stop entertaining people who drain you. You stop wasting time on things that don't grow you. Changing your thinking changes your standards, and changing your standards changes your life. You don't have to make huge leaps at once. Sometimes it starts with one new thought a day. Something simple like, I deserve better, or things can change for me, or my story isn't over. Every time you repeat that thought, your brain begins to accept it. And as soon as your brain accepts it, your behavior begins to shift. You start taking steps toward the life you keep thinking about. That is how transformation begins, not with some big miracle, but with small mental decisions you make day after day. This is why people who believe in their potential almost always rise higher. Their belief pushes them to keep going. Their belief keeps them moving when things get hard. Their belief keeps them open-minded enough to notice possibilities when everyone else sees problems. If you can train your mind to believe in better, your life will eventually rise to match that belief. Your thoughts are like seeds. You plant them long before you see any results. But if you stay consistent, if you keep feeding your mind empowering thoughts, your life will start to bloom in places you never expected. The outside world begins to reflect the work you've done on the inside. And one day, you'll look around and realize you're living a life that started as nothing more than a thought. One positive thought that changed everything. Your mind is powerful, but it is also vulnerable to the environment you put it in. You can have big dreams, big potential, and big plans, but if you surround yourself with negativity every day, it will choke the life out of your motivation. Your environment is like the soil you plant your thoughts in. Even the strongest seed can't grow in toxic dirt. That's why you have to protect your mental space with everything you've got, because what you allow around you eventually finds a way inside you. Some people don't realize how much their surroundings shape their thinking. You spend time around people who complain all day, and suddenly you're complaining. You listen to people who doubt themselves, and suddenly you're doubting yourself. You keep company with people who are scared to take risks, and before you know it, you're playing small too. You're not weak. It's just human nature. The energy you surround yourself with influences the way you think more than you realize. There are people in your life right now who speak fear into your spirit. They tell you to be careful, to lower your expectations, to stay in your comfort zone. They're not always trying to hurt you. Sometimes they're speaking from their own limitations. But if you listen to that long enough, you start thinking their fears are your limits. You start shrinking your dreams so nobody gets uncomfortable. You start dimming your light so nobody feels insecure. And little by little, you begin living a life that doesn't belong to you. Protecting your mental space means being selective about what you allow into your ears, your eyes, and your heart. You have to treat your mind like a valuable home, because it is. You wouldn't let just anybody walk into your house and track dirt all over your floor. So why let anyone dump negativity into your thoughts? Why let people who aren't building anything tear down your confidence? Why let people who gave up on themselves talk you out of becoming your best self? Sometimes the environment you need is quiet. Sometimes it's distance. Sometimes it's letting go of people who drain you. Sometimes it's finding people who speak life into you. You need people who remind you of your strength, not your weaknesses. People who talk about possibilities, not limitations. People who dream bigger than you so they pull you forward instead of holding you back. You can't flourish around people who are committed to staying stuck. When you put yourself in the right environment, your thinking changes naturally. You start feeling inspired instead of discouraged. You start believing in yourself because you hear encouragement more often than doubt. You start planning for more because you see people around you reaching for more. Your environment should make your vision feel possible, not foolish. If you want to grow, you must create an atmosphere that supports growth. Fill your space with things that lift you, books that challenge you, conversations that expand your thinking, routines that strengthen your discipline, habits that keep your mind clear. Your brain becomes sharper when you feed it the right things. It becomes stronger when you protect it from the wrong things. The truth is, you can think positive all day long, but if you stay planted in negative soil, it will drain your progress. But when you choose an environment that supports the person you want to become, your thinking rises, your energy rises, and your entire life rises with it.